future years is not met. But what about the service? Merely by giving a guarantee, I am making a facility available to my subsidiary. Is it or is it not a service? This aspect cannot be dealt with. And in a third-party situation, there would be enough evidence available that a bank who makes available a facility to a customer, whether the customer draws down that facility or not, a certain charge will always be levied by the bank. So this aspect has not really been dealt with in this decision.
Here one more thing in this decision, they have said that it forming part of any other impact on profit losses, because lending or borrowing is something which is not covered in the main part. It is actually fundamentally not correct, because if you see the main part of the definition, lending or borrowing is clearly covered over there. So since it is already covered, it cannot jump to the any other. So I think that is also a fundamental mistake which is there in this.
Thank you.
Suppose this is due to the service, etc. In that case, some service tax department also may count. Because now there is a coordination.
Yeah. The fair point. Hopefully there is no service tax person here to listen to this. In this case, Reliance Industries, the issue was whether a guarantee fee which is quoted in a website, so typically they would look at Allahabad Bank and some other banks, nationalized banks websites and pick up some rates, whether that is valid. So in this particular case, the assessee had provided a corporate guarantee to Bank of America, on the strength of which its subsidiary had taken a loan of some 80 million euros. And the department had taken some third-party cup available, which was 2.5% was the cup available, based on some, it was a Dutch taxpayer. And they said that since this loan is taken in Europe, the Netherlands taxpayer is a comparable jurisdiction, and therefore 2.5% is what they used. So again, in this case, the tribunal held that there were a number of instances where the taxpayer was able to show that it had actually been charged guarantee fee by banks, where the average came to 0.38%, and they held that that should be taken as the arm's length benchmark, not something that the department has picked up somewhere out of context, which was this 2.5%. So again, these are two more decisions relating to guarantees. I'll deal with Asian Paints first. So I'll just jump a slide. So if you see in this case, the taxpayer, which is Asian Paints, has provided a guarantee to a bank, which is a India branch of a foreign bank. Sorry, I think it's ICICI, sorry. So it's an Indian bank, and they have paid commission of 0.25 to 0.35%. Based on that, the foreign branch of this bank has provided a loan to the associated enterprise, and the taxpayer, the Asian Paints, has charged the associated enterprise. So whatever they have paid to this bank, which is 0.25 to 0.35, they have recovered that, plus they have added a markup of 25 or 20 basis points. So they have charged the subsidiary whatever they have paid to the bank plus a particular markup. Now, what the department has taken, TPO has applied 3% as a rate, which again is picked up from various websites. What the tribunal has held is that the recovery of what the assessee has paid to a third-party bank plus a markup is reasonable, because effectively it's giving him more than 50% markup on what his cost is. And what the department has done, which is to pick up this 3% from some website, is inappropriate. Similar kind of a view has been taken in Everest Canto, where again the assessee has a arrangement where they had taken a facility from ICICI Bank at 0.6% and they had charged their subsidiary 0.5%. So again, department has said that internal cup, and although there is a small difference there, they said that should be okay considering the difference in the size of the guarantees. that internal cup was accepted, and they have not agreed to the TBOs using this external 3% data. In Glenmark's case, so again in this case, the taxpayer had charged guarantee commission of 0.53% for a loan and 1.47% for a letter of credit. The DPO has taken 3% as arm's length. Now, they have relied, the tribunal has relied or discussed the decisions of the earlier decisions, Asian Paints, Everest Canto, Reliance, and observed that in all those cases, these 3% rates have been rejected and they have followed the same decision. And they have also agreed with the assessee's contention that there is an inherent difference between a bank guarantee and a corporate guarantee. Because a bank is in the business of giving guarantees. Corporate guarantee is essentially something which is internal, it's an internal activity. To that extent, some adjustments should be made. This is what they have observed. And they have ruled in favor of the assessee. Now, very quickly, this is another issue that keeps coming up, which is a letter of comfort. So, many times the transfer pricing officers are simply extending the same logic of a guarantee to a letter of comfort. Now, the critical thing then becomes is what should be the appropriate wording of a letter of comfort. In certain cases, the letter could be saying nothing more than expressing an awareness of the fact that the subsidiary has taken on a certain borrowing. It could be as simple as that. But the wording of the letter of comfort is very important, and under the relevant civil law of the country where this letter has been given, does the parent company have any liability under the civil law of that country? That is an important factor that needs to be dealt with. But as far as the department is concerned, it is very clearly taking a view that even a letter of comfort is akin to a guarantee, and therefore there ought to be some charge for it. Perhaps the decision that Delhi Tribunal decision of Bharti Airtel that we went through, that perhaps could have some favorable impact over here. So again, the benchmarking and documentation for a guarantee transaction. Again, as I mentioned, the approach should be very similar to what a loan transaction is. You look at the credit rating of the borrower entity, the benchmarking analysis, quotations from third-party bankers, internal documentation, internal transfer pricing policies, and finally, what is the cost saving involved and how it is, what proportion of the cost saving it really needs to get charged out. Again, safe harbors are there for guarantees as well. Guarantee up to 100 crores, you have safe harbor rate of 2%, and guarantee above 100 crores to it's a rate of 1.75%, provided the credit rating of the associated enterprise is done by a credit rating agency which is recognized by SEBI, and the credit rating is of the highest quality. These are conditions which are prescribed under the safe harbor rules. Now, this is a very topical controversy, and in fact has led to some of the largest disputes that we are seeing in the last couple of years. So, very simple, you have a foreign...
One question related to this guarantee.
Sure.
In this downturn, most of the companies where they have provided guarantee to the overseas enterprise, even their own credit rating goes down. So then whether there will be reverse investment for this. A company which is providing guarantee for its overseas enterprise, their own rating comes down because of disproportionate guarantee. It's the same thing as happened like Tata Polos itself. So what would be the impact like in this particular transfer pricing case?
So, as far as one aspect is that how do you value this transaction? Do you value it by way of the benefit that you have provided, or do you value it? So it's like take a loan transaction. Do I value it based on what is my cost of funds, or do I calculate the interest based on what that loan transaction is and what the comparable loan transactions to that are? Now, taking your example, I see where you're coming from, that yes, by giving that guarantee, you are also impairing your own borrowing capacity, and which would mean that there is a higher cost of borrowing as far as the Indian entity is concerned. That I do understand. But I would still say that as far as the pricing of the guarantee is concerned, you would really have to look at what is the benefit that you are giving the subsidiary. Because somewhere you are also providing the guarantee, you are not in the business of providing a guarantee. You are providing a guarantee because you are in the position of a parent company and you have an interest as a shareholder in your subsidiary. So to that extent, your credit rating, in any case, also you'll have to see that this is your standalone credit rating. If you look at it overall, in any case, the subsidiary is consolidated within you. So I would say that you need to look at what is the benefit that you are giving to the subsidiary for this kind of a charge. And again, what is the impact on the parent company? That is a separate issue that will need to be seen.
But a good point for argument.
Yeah.
Excuse me, like we are saying, like safe hour for this guarantee is up to 100 crores, 2% or more, or above 100 crore is 1.75% or more. So this or more means what?
Anything. If you choose to pay 3% and pay tax on that, they are not going to stop.
2% is sufficient, or more means assessing authority can say or more means
No, that's the minimum. That's the minimum. So you meet the 2%, they're okay.
okay, right.
They are not saying you can't do more. So infusion of share capital, you have a foreign company infusing shares, so Indian companies issuing shares to its parent. Many cases you had a situation where even in a case where 100% parent is infusing shares, tax authority has said that you should have done a fair valuation of the shares, and huge adjustments are being made on this for this reason. So if you see the last two cycles of transfer pricing assessment, some of the large names like you have Vodafone, you have Shell, and a lot of these matters are now coming up. I think 15th April is when the matter is scheduled for hearing in the Bombay High Court. Adjustments are huge, and Shell India is 15,000 crores, Vodafone 1,300 crores, and there are a number of other taxpayers also who have been affected. Essentially, the dispute is whether you need to whether you should have done a DCF while issuing the shares. The argument from the taxpayer's perspective is ultimately this is I am issuing shares to my parent company. There is no value shift of any sort, and also it is an issue of shares. Even if you make an adjustment, if you say that I should have issued not at 100 but at 200, the difference should ideally be share premium, which should be a capital receipt, and that is being sought to tax by the revenue. And they are also saying that whatever shortfall that you had, let's say you issued 100, you should have issued at 200. The shortfall they are treating as a loan, which India is giving to its parent company and charging interest on that. So this is a issue that is last 2 years has created a lot of litigation. So very quickly, this is a case law which basically says this is a taxpayer which had sold shares in a domestic company to the associated enterprise, and the valuation was done based on the erstwhile CCI guidelines. The revenue's position was that you should use DCF, and ultimately that is what has been upheld by the tribunal, that DCF is the more appropriate method for this transaction, and you need to follow DCF. Again, that's the same thing that is being that's the same position that is being taken in the share issue controversy. So moving on to intra-group services and reimbursements, and just very quickly, I think I'm conscious of the time. So again, intra-group services, they are inherent for any multinational group that's operating. You will have various kinds of services which are undertaken centrally, and there will have to be some mechanism based on which the services get charged out to different subsidiaries. From a charging out perspective, what is generally looked at is, are the services such as are benefiting the recipient, or are they something that are really duplicating an activity which is already being carried out by the service recipient. This is the main principle. So if it's a service that is beneficial, and if it's a service that would have ordinarily been paid for in a third-party situation, then it is appropriate to charge out for that service. If it is really non-beneficial, or if it is some service that I'm carrying out purely as a shareholder, then there is inadequate justification to charge out. So let me give an example. So let's say there is some audit that has to be done only to meet with the regulatory requirements of the country of the parent. So let's say US has Sarbanes-Oxley, and there is something to be done only for Sarbanes-Oxley, which is purely a US-based regulation. That cost may not be appropriate to be charged out. But that would be more in the nature of a shareholder activity. Or if there is some financial restatement that is to be done only to meet the GAAP requirements of the parent company's reporting framework, then again it would be something which is more like a shareholder activity. But again, these are some of the items that are listed. These are typically activities that do get charged out, and generally multinationals will have some basis on which they will charge out, because a lot of the overseas jurisdictions, so I can give you the example of the US, which has services regulations which lay down requirements for companies that they have to charge out. They have to look at what are the headquarter services that they are entering, and they are required to charge them out to their subsidiaries, otherwise they have a risk of disallowance. So then finally, the key here is the documentation, and really the ability of the recipient to show that they are benefiting from the services. The main challenge, and again which I've just given two case laws over there, the main challenge that we have in this area is to be able to show that the services have been delivered, and what is the benefit that the Indian entity, which is the service recipient, has derived from those services. This is really the main challenge, and the documentation around it. This GEM Plus, again, GEM Plus was a Bangalore tribunal decision. Again, this was a case where there was certain apportionment methodology, certain charges were levied onto India, and the assessee was not able to demonstrate that it had benefited from the services. So on that basis, there was a disallowance. So just to give you an example, we gave one observation in the order is that the parent company is charged for certain trainings, and that training translated into X number. The revenue has observed that you could have sent a person to IIM Ahmedabad for the same amount. So what was the need for you to have paid your parent company for this training? So things like this come out. So I think that the idea is to really be able to strengthen the documentation and be able to demonstrate what was the need for the service, and what was the service, how it benefited the business. This actually comes out very well in this decision of McCann Erickson, where the assessee was able to demonstrate in a very convincing manner, and in fact this is a decision that if you go through that decision, it actually brings out very clearly how they have gone about documenting it, where they have shown that, okay, how was the service delivered? Was it by way of a visit? Was it by way of an email? Was it by way of an access to some portal? What was the benefit to India? So let's say they've given a roster of the clients that this McCann Erickson has, and they said, I could not have possibly had this roster of clients if I did not have access to all those people in the US, or I needed to have technical expertise in these particular fields, which is not available with me, but which was available with my parent. And for each category, or 6 or 7 categories of services that were there in this, for each of them, they were able to demonstrate through adequate documentation that they actually had received these different categories of service. So again, as I said here, the key is documentation and being able to demonstrate benefits. That brings me to an end. I think I've finished in time. I'm happy to take any questions.
In many of the cases, guarantees are given only as a matter of procedural requirement. But still, department based on that GE Canada decision is making the assessment. So if we are able to get a certificate from the bank that this is only a procedural requirement, it will not affect the rate of interest. Will it be very concrete, something which we can rely?
When you say procedural requirement, is the bank going to say that even without that I would have lent?
Yes, it would have lent, it would not have changed the rate of interest.
But again, it would be very fact specific because it will be, so then the argument will be that yes, they would have lent because you are a subsidiary. So that implicit guarantee is already factored in. That's what would happen. So it will be very, so what you're saying, conceptually I see what you're saying, but it will be very difficult to demonstrate that is what I mean.
You have a joint venture, and in terms of the joint venture agreement, you have a clause where both the parties will have to give a loan, maybe an interest-free loan and a corporate guarantee. Would you say this would then end up to be a task?
See, joint ventures can tend to be a little complicated because you may have some shareholders agreements. In a joint venture situation, again, need to be mindful of the fact that there is no differentiation when it comes to joint ventures. The test is, are you an associated enterprise or are you not an associated enterprise? So if you cross the 26% threshold, you will become an associated enterprise and the other consequences will follow. The question is that if you have some prior arrangement as shareholders, then can you say that that is determinative of an arm's length behavior? There could be, again, it will have to be very case specific, but there is always a risk that you could trigger provisions such as 92B2. You could trigger 92F, which defines transaction in a very broad manner, arrangement, action, and concern. So again, it will be very fact specific what you're saying. I would not say in a general sense that in every joint venture situation you can be out of the rigor of this.
So when we are talking of this corporate guarantee, the average department addition is to the tune of 2 to 3%, and more or less the judgments are near to the bank rate of 0.25% to 0.5%. You feel this should be a logical way to look at it, or because after this new rates that they've come up in terms of safe harbors?
See, I think so as far as safe harbor is concerned, I think you have to appreciate that safe harbor does not mean arm's length. In fact, the revenue has gone so far as to say that safe harbor is a convenience pricing. This is a statement made by Kamlesh Washni. Now, what will be the influence of those rates? Whether it will have an influence on the courts, only time will tell. But going by the decisions, and again, guarantee, it will be something which is very fact specific. So again, just because some decisions have okayed 0.35% or 0.4%, whether that will apply as a general rule, one doesn't know. If you look at other industries, there are a number of decisions where assessee with a cost plus 7 or 7.5% has got relief at a tribunal level. Can we make a general statement saying that all cases which are 7 or 8% will get relief at tribunal? Perhaps not. So, again, fact specific, we'll have to see case by case. But again, I can tell you that as far as the safe harbor norms are concerned, those should not have an influence, negative influence as far as the future court decisions are concerned. That I don't think will be the case. The revenue will continue to do what it's doing at an assessment stage. That we don't have control over. Okay, thank you. So if there's anything else, please feel free to tell me.
Thank you, Mr. Khare, for sharing your knowledge and experience. Namrata, can you please?
It gives me immense pleasure to thank Mr. Vaman Kale for the comprehensive coverage of the subject that he has done in terms of various types of financial transactions that we experience and the hurdles we face in benchmarking the same. And I'm sure we would all agree that he has not kept his knowledge and experience implicit, but has explicitly expressed everything that he could give to this audience. For that, I request all of you to propose a hearty vote of thanks. Thank you, sir. We break for tea for about 15 minutes and gather assemble back for the next session. Thank you.